This is Link to the Cast, your weekly dose of video games and nerd culture ephemera, available everywhere good podcasts are sold. I am this week's party host. I am the platforming prodigy. I am Mark Robinson. Both Dave Ryan and Garrett Kidney are away on assignment this week, but with me, my faithful companion, he is Mr. Chelsea. He is Jack to the later the Zell. Jack, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, not bad, mate. I just want to start off by addressing your vicious comments about the Block Party album Intimacy. What's your beef?
Fucking terrible. That's what it is.
Mate.
I have no beef. My beef, well, the only beef is that album's terrible.
Half the album's pretty damn good, mate. Like, it's not their best work.
No, if you were talking about Weekend in the City, that statement you just put out there would be factually correct.
Yeah, as are all of the sort of B-sides from that era. That's like good, like 4 or 5 good ones of those as well. But come on now. You telling me Halo's not a good song? Just sounds like classic Block Party.
I mean, I won't lie. I haven't listened to Intimacy in a hot minute.
Come on! You can't be out there like raining down. This is rubbish. This is terrible. Like, if you were a man about it, you would go and listen to it, and you would come back with a full list of notes for next week's podcast. Look, I'm not the biggest Mercury fan, but you know what? I don't mind it. I don't hate it. Like, it's got some catchy stuff. Aries is cool with the, sort of Chemical Brothers feel to it. Interesting start to the record. Ion Square's quite a sweet song. I don't know, man. There's some good stuff on there.
All I know is I just totally bounced off of that, and then 4 came out, and I thought that was pretty decent. And then Hymns was one of the worst things I've also ever heard. So
Gordy and Matt Tong left, so it was like, at that point it was over for me.
It's up and down over the years.
I saw that.
It's kind of like Daniel Craig's Bond era of Bond. It's up and down.
Yeah, I saw them. I think it was maybe like, would it have been like the 10th anniversary of Silent Alarm? I think it might have been in 2015 when they'd both left, and they had the 2 new members of the band, and it was all right. But I just thought, you know what, I've kind of had my fill now. I've done the whole Block Party thing. God knows I saw them like 20 odd times, and that was that. Block Party aside, how are you, mate? You all right?
I'm pretty good. This week has been fairly low key. No pun intended for things we'll talk about on television. I haven't done much this week. It's mainly been, we have a kind of specific deadline for some of our Game of the Year stuff. We're kind of doing things a little bit earlier this year to accommodate for certain plans that we have, which we won't discuss right now, but we'll probably talk about that maybe next week or the week after. And so I was like, right, I need to catch up on a few bits and pieces. So it's mainly just been quite a bit of gaming this week to clear out a little bit of the backlog. There are now, I've just kind of conceded, there are certain things that are just not going to get played this year. But I do have now at least kind of like a free empty bit of space to try and hammer out Spider-Man in a couple of days. So that's the next thing that I'll probably start. We record on Fridays, so I'll probably spend quite a bit of the weekend giving that the old 1-2. So that means my game section this week is quite lengthy. I've got quite a few things to go over. But no, otherwise, it's not too bad. Maria had her driving test today, her first driving test. Unfortunately, she did fail, but it's one of those kind of by the skin of the teeth. So it's, we, at the start of the week, she just could not for the love of money do like a bay park. She can do it front ways or reverse. And she just constantly was like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this.
Is a bay park just parking when you're in the car at the same time? Or?
No, it's just like, you have like a parallel park, and then you just have like a kind of normal bay park that you would drive into or reverse into.
So she wasn't parking with her bay then. Okay, fair play.
There we go. I see. Yep. I didn't get that at first. Sorry, that one went over me. And yeah, she just could not do it at the start of the week, but she got it by yesterday. She was just, doing it every time, and she nailed it. So it's the one thing she failed on was like the reversing around a corner, and
no one ever does that.
I mentioned it to 1 or 2 people. I was going to say I mentioned it to 1 or 2 people today, and I mentioned it to you before we started recording. And I don't think anyone has ever actually had to do. I mean, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 occasions where I've ended up in a cul-de-sac, but I'm more likely just to do a 3-point turn than I am to fucking reverse around a corner or whatnot. I think it's purely just like show that you can have control of the vehicle when you're reversing, and you can stay consistent to the curb, like distance-wise. But in terms of the actual kind of practice, it's like fucking, when does anyone ever use algebra unless you're, like very much into math? No one ever uses half the shit you learn in math. You use a calculator. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, no one ever needs to do this, but it's just a thing that's on the test. So, yeah, I imagine over the next 8 weeks, she's going to be reversing around the corner of our apartment complex about 1,000 times.
Yeah, like, why would you not just go front ways around a corner? It just makes so much more sense to me.
That's how I would drive around a corner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I got a set square out either. So,
yeah.
You know, have you got a compass? No, I'm not a navigator on a ghost ship from the 1800s, I'm afraid, and therefore I have no need for a compass. I
mean, you're just an Excel whiz kid these days anyway. You just do all your math through that.
I do. I genuinely do a lot of maths in Excel, yeah, pretty much. Can't remember the last time I picked up a calculator. I see people at work who have calculators sometimes. I'm just like, why have you got that? You've got Excel. You know, it's not like you're sitting there fucking sin cost tan in that shit. You're just trying to work out, you know, how many units of this stock, you know, goes to this many stores, and therefore what does that divide into, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not like they're sitting there, like, nailing out some sort of form of algebra anyway, but yeah. It's a very... I
remember once upon a time where my mind was blown by the idea that you could go into the Google browser and you could type in, you know, 34 times whatever number, and then just get the number right away through your Google browser. That was a real exciting time.
You sound like someone's nan.
I know.
Like, all of a sudden, it's like you're at a family party, and they're like, just like, whoever is someone's nan just walks up to me. It's like,
here's my party trick.
Marky, have you seen what you can do with Google? Give me any two numbers. Like, just type them in, and it gives you the sum. And you're like, yes, nan, yes, I do know that you can do that. But yeah.
Watch me here as I type boobies into a calculator.
Well, I mean, if you type boobies into Google, you're going to get some different hit results, my friend. You certainly are going to get the upside down.
I never tried that before. Let me see what happens.
Yeah. 5,318,008, if anybody wants to boobies it up. By the way, on a traditional calculator. Oh, dear. I suppose they do still make calculators, don't they? You figure, like,
yeah, actually there are people who are, you know, collectors of those kind of like old school Casio style calculators. Like that's like a hot thing.
Who does that? Like the band Hot Chip? Like, who else is using Casio anything at this point?
They're not using them. No, they just collect them.
Apart from the watches. The watches are,
you know, like I collect PSPs, they collect Casio calculators.
How many PSPs do you have left? Didn't you sell a few of them?
I'm down to 2.
It's not a collection. It's just an accidental additional purchase.
I'm finding it difficult to sell one of them because it doesn't have a battery, and I can't be fucked to buy one for it. And so I've got the exact price that I want to sell it for.
If it doesn't have a battery, is it even a PSP at this point?
Yeah, no, you can still play it because it's got a plug with it, and as long as it's plugged in, it can still play.
Kind of removes the portable element, doesn't it? The very P in PSP.
Who is fucking walking around playing a PSP on the bus in 2023?
I saw one dude playing a full-on Steam Deck on the tube the other day on the way to football.
Fucking damn right,
mate.
Damn right, that's how it's done.
Homeboy was like crowding out the geezer next to him with this.
Yeah,
I was like,
attaboy.
You can't play a Steam Deck on a tube. You know,
I respect that so much.
The width of seat is not wide enough to be whacking that son of a bitch out on public transport. I was like, what's this guy doing? But I did respect him. I respected his moxie. He was quite big as well, so it's like if someone had
even better.
Someone had beef with him, he was like going to get up and, I don't know, probably whack him to death with his Steam Deck.
Oh, I thought you meant big as in, you know, like chunky. I was thinking that just he's used to just like not giving a shit about other people's kind of space anyway, and just here's my Steam Deck.
No,
you know?
He was quite hench, you know. He had some arms on.
Well, I mean, still.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there was width. There was man girth to him. And here he was playing his big old Steam Deck on that. It's the first time I've ever seen a Steam Deck in the wild.
Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, aside from like maybe one that you brought somewhere, have you ever seen a Steam Deck in the wild?
I don't think so, no. I was going to say the one thing of note is, so when we were traveling through Romania, there was one time we were on a train and we were in a carriage with a few kids that were probably about 17 or so. And I had my Steam Deck there, and I was playing Street Fighter.
They were playing Tamagotchis and shit. I don't know, what were they doing?
And at one point, like, the kid next to me started talking to me, and obviously he'd heard that I'd spoken to her at some point in English. And he's, like, you know, kids in Romania, they all speak fucking perfect English, as most people in mainland Europe do.
Yeah, that's why I'm so bad at languages, Mark. Yeah, I tried to speak Italian in Italy, and the geezer just went back to me like, there you go, mate. Thank you.
But yeah, no, he started just asking me about it, because obviously he'd never seen one before, and there was a girl on the other side of the carriage, she was, again, probably about 16, 17. And she's like, can I hold it? I was like, yeah, of course I can. And she was holding this thing just like, I don't know, like it was sacred property or something, or like it was a fucking bar of gold.
I thought you were going to say, and now I no longer have a Steam Deck.
No. No,
In
honestly,
North London,
like...
if someone did that, yeah, can I hold that, bro? Yeah, do you want to? That's it. Never saw my Steam Deck ever.
Nah, like, fucking kids and all the people that I met in Romania are all just some of the nicest, loveliest people that I'd met. Yeah. And also we're on a train carriage. Where the fuck are they going to go?
Down the train? I don't know. I've seen like less dangerous thefts before. But again, this is me from the mean streets of Enfield, Mark, you see.
Yeah, you... Oh, Enfield. I've not been there in a while, and I'm glad about that. Makes me happy.
Yeah, I was there. I bumped the Flash Walk Webster and just slapped him out, banged him out. No, just kidding. Didn't really.
Hey, that's a former Impact World Tag Team Champion. Thank you very much.
Impact, Mark.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Well, of course they don't, because it's it's not TNA yet. Anyway, we're not talking about TNA. Fuck's sake.
That's the other guy.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I wanted to catch up with you because Dave last week was talking about Stop Making Sense, which is the live concert film of Talking Heads from, I think, 1983, that myself and Dave went to the Lighthouse Cinema in Dublin to see. And it is a shame that I was on last week to kind of give my thoughts as well at the time.
Well, my initial thought was surprised that you didn't really listen to Talking Heads before. I just assumed you would have done.
Well, this is the thing. Like, this is where I was going to kind of start with, because the reason that I never really got into, and I got to be honest, anyone who listens to music, considers himself someone who listens to a lot of music,
puts on a roll
everyone
neck,
has at least,
has a pipe, that kind of muso, right?
Definitely has a record player with only 3 vinyl. Or in my case, has about 5 vinyl but no record player. Everyone has, I think, at least one musical blind spot. And 2 of my significant ones, one was Talking Heads and the other was Pink Floyd, which I only really kind of properly started listening to them in the last couple of years. And in both cases, I did know, the big songs. I knew I could name you, 4 or 5 songs by both bands. But the thing with Talking Heads is that while I like all of the songs, I knew Psycho Killer, I knew Once in a Lifetime, I knew Road to Nowhere, and there's one more that's not coming to me, but anyway. But I always just kind of consider them very much in that 70s, 80s post-punk kind of space. And obviously, listening to Stop Making Sense, it becomes quite apparent pretty quickly that isn't exactly what they are, or at least it isn't what they stayed. They evolved very much significantly from the first album or 2. But that era is just not an era or a genre that I particularly vibe with. I never really got into Joy Division. I never really got into Gang of 4. I just found that sound to be a bit empty. And, I grew up listening to grunge and alternative rock and, just music that kind of filled out the space fully and wholly. And I always found that kind of post-punk era just didn't really vibe with me because of that. And it wouldn't be until the sort of mid-2000s and the aforementioned likes of Block Party and whatnot, where they took that post-punk angular riffage type of sound and kind of, I guess because of advances in production and whatnot, that it just sounds a bit more fuller. And even stuff like, the Manics on the Holy Bible, a lot of the influences on that were of that kind of post-punk era. But because James Dean Bradfield's influences also incorporate a lot of hard rock and glam rock, it kind of cut through with a bit more of an edge and a bit more bite to it.
It's the way you consume music, though. For years and years, music is being basically made to be pressed onto vinyl. It has dynamic range, it has ups, it has natural downs and pauses and stuff in music. And then sort of late 80s, early 90s, they started developing mastering techniques and compression to really fill out sound, really bulk things up and make it sound louder, which at first was okay. And then it turned into what is commonly known as the loudness war, which is, if you look at a waveform of a song, it is basically just a brick that goes up to 0.1 decibels and doesn't go over it the whole time. Or if you're Metallica,
hello, St. Anger.
If you're Metallica, you go massively over it on the album after St. Anger, I think.
Oh yeah, I figured. What the fuck was the album after called?
God,
what was that called?
Some sort of Metallica based.
I know there was a coffin on the front, but yes, Yeah, that was definitely an issue with them.
That was a song, wasn't it?
No, that was a song. And also, I remember, if I remember particularly, the other album that was a culprit of this was, oddly enough, Stadium Arcadia.
Death Magnetic, fucking hell. That was really going to pee me off if I didn't remember that.
So with Talking Heads, I just never kind of... I liked the songs that I heard, but I never kind of felt myself compelled to kind of dive further into it. And so they've, messaged me, I think like 2 days before, and was like, hey, do you want to go see Stop Making Sense and like Talking Heads? And I was like, I'll be honest, I don't really know much about them, but fuck it, it's a live concert and, it's a date. Why not? It's a chance to catch up with Dave. And, you have David Byrne come onto the stage, and he goes up and he starts singing Psycho Killer, and it's just him and an acoustic guitar, and he has that very kind of enigmatic, odd, quirky type of presence about him.
Cocaine.
And then just slowly... Sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, I said, cocaine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just bit by bit, you have the layers of the band kind of come one by one. And like, even by the second song when Tina Weymouth comes on, and then you quickly realize, oh, she's an absolute beast on the bass.
Yeah, cocaine.
And I'm someone... Well, yes, I mean, look, cocaine is definitely a prevalent theme throughout this concert. But you quickly realize that, this isn't just that kind of very simple, angular, post-punk type of music. It like, by the time that you get to Lifetime During War, and it's just this full-on mishmash of world beats and groove and late 70s disco and funk, but all still has that trappings of the kind of post-punk presentation. And it's just the most fucking awe-inspiring thing that you've seen. And considering as well that like everyone on that stage is moving at 100 miles an hour, and David Byrne just doesn't seem to ever be out of breath, even though he's moving more than I move in like a week. And he's just, his breath control is perfect. His singing is on point.
Don't make me tap the sign, Mark. You know what the sign says.
And just, I was just so blown away. And then from that, they go straight into like Make Flippy Floppy. And then by the time they get to Girlfriend Is Better, I was in hook, line and sinker. But the thing that's interesting is I went and I listened to a bunch of their stuff afterwards, and I still came away like, if David had just shown me all of these songs in their original form, I probably wouldn't have been into it if I hadn't seen the live version first. And that's not to say that, the kind of like 80s production, I don't have the ear for it, because that's not true at all, because like some of my favorite albums are from the 80s, Power Slave, Disintegration. Excuse me.
They're just like two very diametrically opposed sounds there.
Damn right, it's what I'm about. But I just think there's a certain like energy that Talking Heads have that, even as incredible as those songs are on print, there's something about the way that they come across live that there's just that extra kind of kick, extra bit of juice to it, probably cocaine. I was just fucking absolutely blown away by it. And by the end of it, I was just looking over Dave. I was like, well, this is one of the best fucking things I've ever seen or heard. So, which I'm sure made him very, very happy.
Yeah, I mean, Talking Heads are anything but sort of generic of that sound. Just absolutely just fold loads and loads of influences in on top of each other. It's just the ultimate like New York art house rock band, really. It's like, if there's ever a perfect band for like late 70s, early 80s New York, it's Talking Heads. Like, it captures all of the, underground punk and all of that kind of stuff, but also some of the more kind of disco-y influences, Studio 54. And I talked about it last week, so I won't repeat myself. But it's just the ultimate New York rock band. And then, everyone that came after them, I don't know, like Vampire Weekend, LCD Sound System, Arcade Fire, you could argue.
I mean, this is the other thing as well. This is the other thing as well. As I was listening to them, I was like, all right, well, there's Franz Ferdinand. All right, there's this band. All right, there's that
Radiohead
band. Like, you can... Well, yeah. But just every song you can hear where, all right, there's like 5 bands I know, obviously, where they pulled their influences from. And I knew a little bit, obviously, that, Talking Heads were such a kind of prominent band and so crucial in terms of their influence on so many other artists.
Yeah.
But I think just being able to hear the songs that would inspire all of those bands. And I did say to Dave, as Burning Down the House was playing, I was like, Dave, you do realise the first time I heard this song, it was the Tom Jones cover in the early 2000s, which then naturally made me have Sex Bomb in my head for the next 3 to 4 days, which was an unintended side effect of this whole thing, but here we are.
Is Tom Jones the leatheriest man on the planet? Like, I feel like at this point he's made out of pure cowhide.
There are certain Japanese wrestlers in their 60s and 70s that could probably hold a candle to that flame.
Know, there are cobblers chasing after this man for his glorious bounty for their shoes.
Dear.
Dude, he fucking looks like a pair of trousers at times with the leveriness of them.
I know. I'd imagine so as well, because he must be, in his 80s by now, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm sort of like in that era of the sort of Sex Bomb era of the, sort of 90s and 2000s.
I went, for my own amusement, I went back and I watched the Sex Bomb video, and it is one of the more cringier fucking things I've seen put to video. Just this guy in his 50s talking about, like, yeah, you're my sex bomb and you can turn me on. And I'm just like, oh, this is no, not comfortable with this at all.
Yeah, it's, I don't know with Tom Jones, man. A great voice, but I don't know, he just strikes me as the sort of person that he might well have been, but I'm shocked that he's never been Me Too'd. So he has that element about him. It's a sort of like a level of greasiness there. I don't know. Maybe that's harsh.
Nah, look, he's Welsh. Everyone. Actually, no. Wait, no. Not everyone from Wales is sound. Let's just skip straight past that comment. Fucking hell. Anyway. Yeah. What have you been watching?
Ooh. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. That's tugging at the collar there.
Yeah. Let's not mention any tugging. So I watched the finale of Loki today, and my word, has this series of Loki been so fantastic? Did they nail this finale? I'd be very interested to hear what fellow co-hosts Dave and Garrett have to think about it, potentially, if either or both are back next week. But for me, they did. I have watched the first 2 episodes, so I just want to say that's how far we are at the moment. So I have at least started it, but we still haven't. Yeah, it's okay. I think that... You went the high pitch when someone's like, "Oh, do you like my bright pink jumper that I bought you as a gift?" Yeah, it's okay, Mum, thanks.
No, it's okay. I think that a lot of the
Tom Hiddleston
kind of connection. No, just a lot of the connection or resonance that I had with the sort of whole MCU thing. A lot of that has subsided. So at this point, it's just...
If it's just a show, I don't feel like you really... The only connection you really need is sort of watch the first series of Loki, really. I don't think that the importance in the MCU is that paramount with this show.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that a large part of the reason that we're watching it is that Maria is particularly enamored with Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, why wouldn't you be?
And a lot of that comes from obviously the Thor films and like his whole portrayal of Loki throughout the MCU. So I do think that you have that carries over, but it is fair to say that you're watching this season of Loki and everything that happened there is just, it didn't need to happen. And obviously the kind of constant comparison that people have been making is to Doctor Who. And it goes without saying, it's Doctor Who with a budget, which is, always kind of weird to see, I guess, anytime anything that was like BBC related then ends up with a budget, because, yeah, you're like, oh wow, visual effects that don't look like they were done in 1994. This is interesting.
It's part of the charm though of Doctor Who, and I think it always has been.
It is. No, you're not wrong.
It's a bit like Amdram almost, Doctor Who.
But sometimes, even like in the kind of the Matt Smith era we were watching, there's like in the first episode you have this kind of like ill shark alien creature, and it's just like, oh boy, it's fucking. Let me just go back and watch Jurassic Park and just do a comparison. Wait, that was 1993, was it?
Matt Smith, is he that guy that was in Morbius?
He was also in Terminator Genesis, crucially.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of the guy from Morbius, the guy that dances around. Milo?
Yeah, what does he do in Terminator Genesis? I think...
he's just counting down his time until he's in Morbius, I think is probably the answer to that.
Morbius 2. Electric Boogaloo.
Anyway, from Morbius back to Mobius. The finale was perfect. It had, without giving any spoilers away before anyone's nervous, it had some Groundhog Day vibes, which I liked. It had some serious overtones of melancholy, which I loved. And it had a really interesting ending and like a really satisfying arc of character development for Tom Hiddleston's Loki. I thought it was just a really clever way to illustrate, because, you know, he's always been the sort of guy who's never going to be honest. He kind of uses his like words and his tricks as weapons, and you never really get the honesty out of him. And about halfway through this series, you know, Sylvie turns around to him and she's like, well, why are you really doing all of this? And he's very honest about it. And then the ending of this series, you just see that element and him kind of piecing together that he has to be the one to do the thing that he does. We're getting very non-specific, and I just think it's executed so perfectly. And like there's like a closing shot of like something being viewed in a timeline and a pushback to Loki in a certain situation, and I just think it's perfect. Like, it's such a good ending. I don't know if we get any more from here. I'm not sure. Is there going to be Morbius or Lesbius? Let's not speculate. But yeah, I think if that is the wrap-up of this, I think they did an incredible job. But I do think at some stage, in another movie or something, they will revisit Loki as a character, because Tom Hiddleston's just too good. Like, he's just too slick. And I feel like when they're teasing, you know, recently, like, you know, those people you loved before, they might be coming back at some point. And like, they launched the Marvels this week, and it had like, was it the third lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of any movie they've ever brought out? And the other two were the ones that they've brought out in the last year or two as well. Yeah, I think we'll be seeing more of Loki. I don't know if we get another series of Loki, but, you know, because of the timey-wiminess of it and what happens with Loki, I think they could just bring him back in any form. You know, I'd quite like to see Crocodile Loki again, Alligator Loki from the previous series. I'd quite like to see Richard E. Grant come back as his sort of old man Loki as well.
I mean, we just need more Richard E. Grant
Just
in general.
anything. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Let's just do a podcast about Richard E. Grant.
That works for me. I do find that, you know, of everything from that original 3 phases that makes up the you know, the first kind of big chunk of the MCU, of the things that have kind of carried over, like the kind of real significant things, it's like it's him and it's Thor that are like the big guns, and I guess Spider-Man as well, but he wasn't there from like the get-go. But, you know, like, you think about that last Thor film, and it's like, well, I'm more than happy if they never fucking retread this ground again. But Loki continues to just to have the legs, and
meanwhile, Jeremy Renner's like, you guys remember about Hawkeye, right? We made that Christmas series. Everyone loved that.
I really liked that. I thought it was great.
Yeah, exactly. But you still forgot.
I mean, he'll probably pop up in Echo at some point.
You forgot about Hawkeye, bro. Yeah,
but I'm just talking about like really properly prominent, you know.
Mate, you are just burying Hawkeye right now. 10 feet below. Outrageous slander.
Come on now, he can't even fly.
That is true. He does have a bow and arrow though, which is pretty sweet,
he does,
if you ask me.
No, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing this thing through. The problem I have with Loki, I had it in the first season and I got it in this season as well, is that I just sometimes wish that just the writing was a little bit sharper. It's not as bad as some of the most recent Marvel MCU films have been, but there are times where it's just like it feels like the writing is just kind of sleepwalking to get to the next point, and what keeps you invested is just the overall kind of concept and the set pieces. And I do think that, you know, the introduction of Obi and the bit where they have Loki kind of keep switching between the past and the present or the future. And he's kind of talking to OB at the same time. Like, that kind of whole setup is really, really well done. But there's just kind of little bits and pieces where just the kind of dialogue between characters, it's just, I don't know, I feel like 10, 15 years ago, it'd be a little bit tighter, a little bit funnier. And sometimes it's kind of left me wanting more. But so that might be partially just kind of like a high standard that I'm hoping for that I'm not quite getting.
I've got to say,
but I know that these films have been way stronger with their writing at times.
I've got to say, one person who I thought was drastically underutilized in this season was Owen Wilson. Like, you've got Owen Wilson. Like, how much natural charisma does that guy have?
And also, like, he was such a revelation in that first season.
He was brilliant.
You know, that's part of what the charm of that first season was.
And there's a moment in the last episode, Mark, where it's just him and Loki, and they're in a scenario they've been in before, and they're just having a chat, just acting and just playing off each other. And, you know, he starts asking the right questions to Owen Wilson, and it's just so beautifully done. And they have this moment at the end where they kind of get up and shake hands and look each other in the eye. And I was like, oh man, it just really hammered home to me how much more Owen Wilson magic we haven't had in this season. That's my only downturn. But I mean, the massive upswing is Ke Huy Quan as OB. He is the best. Just the best. Just, I love his energy, like his slightly chaotic, wacky scientist energy. It's so perfect. And obviously everybody saw him and everything everywhere all at once and went, oh, we must get him for our next timey-wimey project. So I look forward to seeing like Ke Huy Quan and all of the weird time travel type movies and stuff that comes out in the future, because that guy is endlessly entertaining to me.
All right, now tell me about a film that I'm definitely not going to see because I cannot be fucked to sit down for 3.5 hours and watch this fucking thing.
I mean, let's face it, Mark, you definitely sit down for 3.5 hours most days.
I can, but I'd rather be doing something that isn't watching Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well, that's where you're wrong, Mark, because Leonardo DiCaprio is one of Hollywood's best actors. So,
yeah, but I also, I don't know, he was in Titanic, he was in Don't Look Up, he did The Beach. I didn't like The Beach.
Yeah, but we got that song from him, man, Pure Shores, All Saints.
Oh, Pure Shores is a banger. I guess we also did get My Heart Will Go On. Nothing, no bangers that came out of Don't Look Up, huh?
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah.
Look, for every My Heart Will Go On, there's a Pure Shores out there to make things better. That's all I'm going to say.
For every Men in Black, there's a Wild Wild West. Actually, that's not true. Both of those
I was
are
going to say, for every Men in Black, there's a Men in Black too. What was the song from Nod Your Head? Yeah, that was it. Nod Your Head, wasn't it, from Men in Black 2? Do you know what
was...
Go on.
I was going to say, was it Ice Cube who did a song for Deep Blue Sea?
No. You are referring to Deepest Bluest. My hat is like a shark's fin.
That's the one. That's the...
Which, of course, is the utter great Ladies Love Cool James, LL Cool J.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Shout out Dan Newman if he's listening. What a tune. Deepest Bluest, my head is like a shark's fin. That's a chorus. Do you know what? I was incredibly disappointed by it, because I actually thought Men in Black 3 was quite good. I went with a couple of people when I used to work in the library, some library types, and I spent the whole day knowing that we were going to this movie in the evenings. It's just down the road from where we worked, being like, look, I don't care if this sucks like Men in Black 2. I just need that the curtain to come down, or the closing credits to start, and I just need that Will Smith banger. I just need that big Willie style just coming at me all over. And unfortunately, nothing. There wasn't a Will Smith single for Men in Black 3. Do you know how shortchanged I was, Mark?
No, do you know what? Honestly, anytime I watch a Will Smith film, I have this exact same thing, you know? Like, I got to the end of After Earth, and there was no bop at the end there. I was like, you just made me watch this piece of shit film, and you give me nothing. Same thing with Gemini Man as well. I was owed a fucking banger at the end of that, but here we are.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Anyway, what the fuck were we talking about?
Anyway, so the new Scorsese movie that isn't a Will Smith song.
That's it. Is Will Smith in this?
There was no Jim West Desperado. Rough Rider, no, you don't want none of this.
Don't give a shit about this then.
Okay. Again, shout out to Dan.
If Martin Scorsese did a Men in Black film, maybe I'd go and see that.
Yeah. But made Men in Black, and it stars Joe Pesci in the lead role. That'd be great.
Fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, just obviously all about the mob. This isn't about the mob. So Killers of the Flower Moon, although it does have De Niro in it, is a film about...
Imagine if we'd gotten Ray Liotta in Men in Black, all right? You know,
Every now and then I remember that Ray Liotta's dead, and I just think that sucks.
Yeah, that does suck.
That guy had some serious, just real kind of energy to him, just such a great performer, just could go from calm to manic in a matter of seconds like no other man. But yeah, so Killers of the Flower Moon, I feel like I'm putting off talking about one of the greatest directors of all time. It is set in the 20s in Osage County, and it is about how the Osage Indians, or Native Americans, they're referred to in the movie as Indians, I believe, Native Americans or indigenous American sort of inhabitants, they strike oil, Mark. So therefore, they are then sitting on a potential gold mine. So they build this town around all of these oil rigs in Osage County, and then all of the native people that live there get very rich. And of course, with money attracts white people.
Yeah.
You know what? white people, Mark, in history, especially white people.
We don't have a great track record, do we?
We don't. Turns out in the past we've done some stuff, you know.
I mean, in the present and probably in the future.
Yeah, let's not dwell too much on that. Incredibly depressing thought as well. But yeah, so white people come, and Robert De Niro's character of King, as he's called in this movie, and refers to himself, you know, sets himself up in the community, nice little cushy house, and, you know, feels like he's got the outward appearance of a man who cares about everybody, but of course, on the underground, is actually gradually killing off the native people who live there, and is marrying them off to white people that he kind of gets into his clutches, and then all of a sudden mysterious deaths are happening, whether it's from, you know, withering diseases or diabetes, or some people kill themselves in inverted commas, and every now and then there's just a good old-fashioned murder. But the people of Osage are just gradually dying out. And you find this out kind of like in the first few frames, and then it cuts to Leonardo DiCaprio, who's doing what I can only describe to you as the frowny face emoji for the entire movie. Like, he's sort of twisted his whole face into this downward curve of sadness, which, as fellow co-host Dave Ryan told me, for the first few minutes, very off-putting. You know, Leo DiCaprio, very handsome man, really makes himself look sort of quite downbeat and miserable, but yeah, just it's the perfect sort of frowny face emoji. Shout out Keith Broney. And all the way through the film, he's doing that, keeps that energy up. But he's coming back from the First World War, where he wasn't a fighter. I think he had some sort of stomach-based injury in the movie, but he was actually a chef feeding the troops. And he's a sort of like, you know, happy-go-lucky kind of handsome devil womanizer type character, and Robert De Niro sees him, like Robert De Niro's his uncle in the movie, King is his uncle, and he sees like a handsome young guy that I can send out, you know, like bait to entrap another native woman into marrying so I can get the money, and he marries Lily Gladstone, Molly in the movie, and now she's getting an Oscar, Mark. Lily Gladstone is unbelievable in this movie. Like, she is the central point, she's the heart and soul. You know, she starts off as this like quite funny, quite intelligent, you know, clearly too good for the majority of the people around her, but has this great energy to her character. And then, you know, spoilers, but more and more horrible things happen to her and her family, and she becomes more and more downcast and, you know, more and more insular, and yeah, you just sort of see the gradual decay of her as a human being throughout this thing. It's just portrayed so well by Lily Gladstone. Like, she's absolutely fantastic. And don't worry, she does get a moment kind of at the end, you know, her sort of like punctuation mark of the whole thing, but she's kind of the heroine of the movie, while Leo DiCaprio, who's almost, you know, he's aware of what's going on and he's participating in it, but he's almost like too dumb and too greedy to do anything about all of the shit that his uncle is doing, and it's awful. And it is based on a true story, and it was actually a book a few years ago, Killers of the Flower Moon, and, you know, it made me kind of want to read the book after seeing the movie. But it's just a very interesting, very compelling story, very well acted. Now, to sort of, I guess, answer what you said at the start, does this movie need to be 3.5 hours long? Fuck no. Like, you could have got out of here in 2.5 hours max, I think, and it wouldn't have had any real effect on it. But you know what? It's Martin Scorsese. He does what he wants. He wanted to make the movie 3.5 hours long, so fuck it. He did. And you know what? It was a compelling watch, and all the way through, I enjoyed it. It went by relatively quickly, but, you know, when you're in the cinema, you don't notice the time. But then when you come out of the cinema and like trying to fit it into your day, trying to fit it into your weekend, it's quite difficult to fit 3.5 hours just in there unless you make a whole. I
mean, I felt the 3 hours of Oppenheimer.
Yeah. But that rule,
so, like, the idea of. I mean, I wasn't as big on it as you and Dave were.
That was class.
So I definitely felt that. For me, I just 3 hour films. I feel like 2.5 hours, because any time I've been to see a 3 hour film, whether it was The Batman, whether it was Interstellar,
Endgame though.
Endgame was the one exception.
Yeah.
Because I think that thing flies by at a pace. Like, you're in the third act before you even realise it.
And you just want it all. Like, everything that happens in that movie, you're just like, oh, come on now. Can't wait for this next bit to happen. And then it happens and you're like, fuck yeah. and then something else happens and you're like, fuck yeah, and then it's like the end of the movie, right? So yeah, but comparing Scorsese to Marvel is exactly what his deepest, darkest, sickest nightmare is. I can confirm, though, this is a brilliant movie. Stay to the end and watch the summation at the end. There's some interesting cameos, one that I didn't recognise that I'm sure Dave will bury me for because it's somewhat of a personal hero to him. But yeah, it's just a class movie. It's just Scorsese doing what he does best, really, which is take a story and just, really compelling actors in it and a beautiful visual spin. And now that the actors strike has ended in America as well, Lily Gladstone can actually come out and do some interviews and everyone can just give her her flowers and just go, you're fucking awesome. And I'm doing it right now because she really is fucking awesome. She is getting the Oscar. If anyone else gets it, I will be fuming. Not that I ever really care about who wins Oscars, but I just sat there and I just thought, I've seen a lot of movies this year, as I do most years, and I've just not seen anybody anywhere near that level. So yeah, unless something pretty impressively incredible comes out between now and then, safe to say she's got it in the bag. One hell of a movie. It's coming out on Apple TV soon, Mark, so it will be out on the internet if you want to watch it in installments. I think you probably can. It probably plays like a 3 or 4 part series anyway, so yeah. I would get it watched though, mate. It's a good movie.
I
sound impressed.
know. Yeah, look, Maria and her nephew are going to go see it this weekend, I think. So I'll let them do it. I'll let them report back to me.
You're going to stay home and stew in your own juices.
Look, Spider-Man's got to get played, all right?
Fair enough.
Once again, coming back to Marvel, fuck's sake.
Scorsese hates you. You are literally the worst human scum to him right now.
That's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, I think you could take him. He's quite small, and he's 80.
Him and Tom Jones, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, but Scorsese's not leathery.
No.
Looks like a pair of fucking chaps.
Not Welsh as well. Jesus.
He hasn't put Welsh for years.
Let's move on.
He's just leather.
Let's
pure leather.
Move
like a cattle farm.
on. Jack, have you played anything this week?
I played some more Mario Wonder, just like in the evenings, but I just been so tired this week. I did want to give Alan Wake a go. I still think I might do that this weekend with some spare time.
Have you purchased it? Do you own it?
No, but I could that could happen. I could drop some big ones on Alan Wake and be quite happy about it.
That's what, like 60, 70 boys?
Yeah, I just got paid the other day. I'm feeling reckless, so
okay, all right.
If it's going to be in the Game of the Year conversation, I do want to get it played, or at least have some sort of thing about it when, all 4 of you guys decide that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and all the games I like suck. So, yeah.
I mean, Jack, let me make this quite clear to you. I will not be playing Alan Wake before Game of the Year, so partially because of the spooky times, partially as a protest against Control. There's a number of reasons.
Mate, we're going to get ganged up on by Dave and Garrett and Barry.
Maybe. I don't know. Look, there's a lot that could be said about Game of the Year. I don't think anything is locked down. I feel like this is probably the most open year we've had.
Yeah, and it's funny because after I played Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, oh god, like this is another episode from last year like we had with Elden Ring. And then there's been some really great games since then, in fairness.
Yeah. I've got one in particular here to talk about, which I'll get to in a minute. I will say one of those games that will not be appearing in our Game of the Year list is Sonic Superstars.
Tell us why, Mark.
God, fuck. So Garrett has spoken about this game in a prior episode. I cannot for the life of me understand why you would decide that, if you're going to do a 2D Sonic game in 2023, after the success, both critically and commercially, of Sonic Mania, which, a large part of the reason why that game was so good is because it was harkening back to the heyday of Sonic with Sonic 2 and 3, that you would think what you should actually do is go back to the very, very low ebb that was Sonic the Hedgehog 4 from, I think that was like the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s. By far one of the, if not worst, 2D Sonic games ever made. And just every aspect of this as you play it feels like something that was it's just the most like cynical cash grab. Let's just get a fucking 2D Sonic game out. It feels clunky. It looks cheap. The soundtrack is largely forgettable because even if nothing else, usually a Sonic soundtrack has got a couple of bops here and there to keep you going. But like the special zone in this game, which has you kind of like grappling hook shot in towards rings towards the diamond, feels like something that was made in an afternoon. Just every aspect of this feels like corners were cut.
There's a bad.
Honestly, it's fucking dreadful.
That sucks, man. Grappling hook sections always rule in video games as a rule.
Yeah, but it's also easily to kind of fuck up if it doesn't feel intuitive and clunky and looks like shit, which this ticks all three of those boxes. And, I'm someone that, I've made it quite clear that you can't make a good 3D Sonic game. It just doesn't exist. But I'm always willing to give 2D Sonic games a go, and I'm slightly higher in terms of my enjoyment of them than other people in this podcast, and that's fine. And I understand the concern or the criticisms in regards to like the way 2D Sonic games play, and some of that is actually quite valid.
He's a stupid little blue prick.
But it's just, you've done good ones of these. Why would you fucking go and make one of the worst ones of these? And also, look, Sonic Frontiers is a bad game, but it's also a weird game where they were just kind of trying shit. Like, of all the complaints that I can have about the game, and I do have many, I do concede, and I think both me and Garrett are like, they were going for something. I don't think they knew what they were going for, but they fucking went for it anyway, and I can kind of admire and appreciate that about Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Superstars has none of that at all. There's nothing here where you look at it and it's like, oh, they were trying to be a bit creative or a bit inventive or think outside the box. It's just no. And in the week that came out, where you had Super Mario Wonder came out, and it shows in terms of the sales because this thing has bombed. It's just like Stephanie Sterling did a video a couple of weeks ago talking about Sonic as a whole and how not only do Sega and the Sonic team fuck up in terms of just making bad Sonic games, but when they make something that's good or at least has an idea, like it might not be, with Sonic Frontiers, it's going for something. It doesn't exactly nail the landing, but at least it's trying something that's like, all right, maybe there's something here. They just don't stick with it. They immediately have to go to, all right, Sonic is a werehog now, whatever the fuck he was in that particular Sonic Unleashed. Or he's now, in some sort of relationship with a princess. Or they're doing the Lost Worlds thing where they're doing a Galaxy ripoff. Like, they keep jumping from gimmick to gimmick, but they don't actually just kind of stick with one idea for at least, 2 or 3 games and kind of see that thing through. And, there's been all this discussion about Mario Wonder, and part of the reason that game feels as tight and as focused and as creative as it is because you've got people that have been working on, like, the Mario games for over 30 years. So obviously those games are going to be as tight and as polished as they are because, not only are they working on this thing that they've been doing for so long now, but the Mario games, they don't dive too far outside of the box in terms of their platformers. All right, sometimes he has a hat that you can throw around, and sometimes there's loads of coins in this particular game, but kind of the bells and whistles are usually the same. And that just means that every time you just kind of bang out this like proper polished, just streamlined, superb experience. And just the Sega team, the Sonic team, they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot, and it's just so unnecessary. So yeah, Sonic Superstars is quite a bad game.
That's a shame.
I tell you what though, Jack, it's not as bad as Headbangers Rhythm Royale, the worst game I've played this year.
Now this sounds to me like a program that would be on in the 80s to feature bands such as Poison, Rat, and Winger. Is it? Has it got anything to do with like hair metal?
I mean, it has something to do with music, I guess, or I guess you can compare it to hair metal in terms of it's bad. That's the comparison I would make. So, Headbangers Rhythm Royale, the moment that you boot it up and you look at the UI of the menu screen and the flow of that, you're like, all right, this is obviously trying to do a Fall Guys, which is not a bad thing because we had Party Animals a couple of months ago, which was taking elements of Fall Guys and Gang Beasts and kind of putting a slight spin on it. And I thought that Party Beasts actually was really successful, and I've gone back and played that a fair few times, and I still really enjoy that. The problem with Headbangers Rhythm Royale, and I feel bad about doing this because as someone who's now trying to make a game, I understand that making games is very difficult, and I try to be kind of at least conscious about, if I look at a game, can I find something about it that there's at least like some tangible quality or some sort of like I can kind of validate me playing this thing. I just can't with this game though. It's like a first year uni project where they went, all right, we need to kind of come up with something. Okay, let's use the template of Fall Guys where we'll have 5 rounds and there'll be 50 players, and we'll chip away at that amount of players per round until we have like our last, the Takashi's Castle format. And what you've got are the game is based around like all of these birds that you can dress up in different gimmicks and musical themes and whatnot. And each round is a rhythm action game, which come in the 2 or 3 times that I played this thing. There was a music quiz, which was based on, here is a type of sound. Here is a genre of music. Not even a genre of music, a band, basically. Here is like the kind of Audi/little free license equivalent of that band. And then here are 4 birds or pigeons that are dressed up like, hey, that's obviously Freddie Mercury, that's obviously Robert Plant, blah, blah, blah.
We haven't got Queen, we've got their non-union Mexican bird equivalent, basically.
Yeah. So now guess like which bird corresponds to the music that you're hearing. And all right, that's fine, I guess. Like if I was playing Buzz back in the day on the PS2, this is probably something you would see on that. But then you have another rounds where it's literally all you're doing is just pressing. It's like a rhythm action, like a Parappa the Rapper, where you're hitting A when A shows up in line with the cursor, then B, then up, and blah blah blah. But it's got like none of the charm or fun or the musical quality that a Parappa the Rapper has. It's just all bare bones, like basic assets. It looks just generic as fuck. There's no kind of visual flair to it. All of the music, because it's doing this kind of free license thing, is all just awful to listen to. And none of the games, even the fucking Clefairy Simon Says minigame from Pokemon Stadium is more compelling than anything this game has.
Wow, that is some burial.
Oh my god, this thing is, yeah. I mean, here's the thing, Jack. It's on Game Pass. I kind of would say just go and download it for 5 minutes to see what I'm talking about, because this is... I generally do think this is the worst thing I've played this year.
Wow. That bad?
Yeah.
Oh, that's some burial. Yeah, I can't say I'd even heard of this game. Was it at least a Game Pass free?
Yeah, it's on Game Pass. It's on Game Pass. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so I mean, what I tend to do, because I follow the Xbox accounts on Twitter, so, I see often regularly, like, hey, here's all of the new games. And I'll have a look on there, and, there might be a couple of things that even if I'd never heard of it, I'll be like, oh, fuck it, let's download it and see. And that was one of them. And just, yeah, it took all of about 10 minutes to know that this was just... Oh, man. This was no
Look at the aesthetic. They have absolutely ripped off Nick Park as well. Yeah. The chicken from... that was actually a penguin from... was it Wrong Trousers? Yeah, I think it was Wrong Trousers.
Yeah, it was Wrong Trousers.
Yeah, I mean, it looks so much like that. Yeah. Mark, now would you rather dress like former WWF tag team, the Headbangers, with the cones and that, than play this game ever again?
Oh, definitely the Headbangers, every day of the week.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
You have to go out in public, though, with the cones and everything.
That's fine.
Yeah?
That's fine.
Rather than play this game again.
Not an issue. I will put those cones on right now.
Wow. This game must suck, guys.
Yeah. So that's that. The next thing that I played, which is also on Game Pass, is a game called Jusant, which comes to us from Don't Nod, which is a studio I know you, Jack, have a particularly strong affiliation with.
Hell yeah!
So this is not really like the games that you would probably know that Don't Nod make. For anyone who doesn't know, they're most kind of strongly associated with the Life is Strange series. This though, is not really like any of those. This is it's kind of a puzzle platformer where the key gimmick is that you're wall climbing. And wall climbing in video games, certainly in the last like 5 to 10 years or so, specifically in the the kind of AAA space, is usually like this thing that you do to get from point A to point B, but there isn't really much thought process involved. Like you go up to the wall that has, very specific, obvious markings that sometimes also light up to show you, hey, you can climb on this. You press the action button, and then you just start moving. Sometimes it's pre-programmed, sometimes you can just, hold the analog stick and your character moves. But those areas in a game, typically I think of like Uncharted 4 and God of War, where It's just, to get from point A to point B, and there's a bunch of exposition that goes on during that time to kind of fill that space and to kind of further, whatever the motivations between the characters that are doing it. It's fairly mindless. It's, it's not the worst thing, but you've kind of seen it once, you've seen it every time. So what Jusant does is it just goes, all right, let's just make a game that's purely based on the wall climbing and make that as interesting as possible. And the way that it does this is that your ability to wall climb is assigned to the right trigger and the left trigger. Your right trigger is your right hand, left trigger is your left hand. And you'll come up to a wall, and you'll hold down the right trigger, and your right hand will go up, and it will start hovering towards any part of the environment that your character can latch onto. And once you've done that, you can grab onto it, and you can let go. You can then hold the left trigger, and then your left hand will go up, and then it will reach a little bit higher, and reach again for like the nearest rock that it can find. And it feels very natural, very organic. It feels very lifelike in terms of the way that you would climb up a wall, reaching for each rock that's available, or whatever part of the environment is that you can climb on. And the environment that you can climb on, there's a mixture of rocks. There are these small creatures that are shaped like rocks that can actually kind of like carry you along. There are specific types of plants that you can climb on. And these things are telegraphed enough in terms of you can look at it and go, that looks like something I can climb on. But it's not, it's not glowing with any kind of like white outline or anything. It still requires you to go to that and say, all right, can I climb on that or not? You can also, every time you start climbing a wall, you have 3 or 4, I don't know what the technical term is, but basically you can kind of hook into the wall, and then you can drop yourself slightly. So you can just kind of hang around for a few seconds to get your bearings. Crucially also, you have a stamina meter. So, think about what Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild does, where you're climbing up and you have a stamina meter, and that stamina meter slowly comes down. If it gets to the end, you'll fall to wherever you were. So you can hook yourself in, and then you can stop yourself, and that will recharge your stamina meter. One of the things that this game does, though, that I really like is that as you're climbing and as your stamina meter is coming down, you also sometimes you have the option to jump as well, to get yourself like over to another area, like in a lot quicker a span of time than just climbing or just kind of climbing along the wall. Though sometimes it's necessary, because you might be at like one spot and then you might see a bunch of rocks above you. You can't just climb up there. You're going to have to make that small jump to get up there. The risk reward of that, though, is that when you jump, wherever you are on your stamina meter, a small section of that gets whited out. And that means that from then on, the rest of your stamina that goes down, when you recharge your stamina, it goes up to wherever like your most recent whited out part is, and you can't get back above that. So you have less stamina to work with. So you have to kind of think about, all right, can I make this jump here and then get to like wherever the solid ground is? If not, is there like another way around? So there is actually quite a bit of strategy in terms of how you get around the environment, and I guess kind of turns it into a bit of a puzzle game. What I really like about the wall climbing is that, having never really done wall climbing myself, certainly not, out in the open, there's that real sense of like gravity to where you are, and the danger, and like if you fall from a certain distance and you're hooked in, when you kind of hit whatever the bit where the slack ends on the rope, there's that kind of violent jolt of you kind of like snapping back, and you can kind of feel it, and like the character makes a noise that it sounds really violent, sounds really unpleasant, and you kind of feel like, I want to avoid doing that, because it just doesn't feel like there's no like kind of death sequence or kind of health meter, but it just doesn't feel nice. There's a kind of real sense of weight to the fact that like if you drop a certain bit, your character will naturally kind of put their feet against the wall if they can reach a wall, and then you can actually start running back and forth, or like left and right, and actually run along the wall. So sometimes instead of kind of climbing a fair amount, you can actually just drop a little bit and then just kind of run, get yourself up to a certain point, then hook in immediately, and you kind of covered a fair amount of distance that way. So you have a few options in terms of like the way that you traverse around the environment. So all of that, I think this game does really, really well, and really successful with it. The problem is, though, is that outside of that, this game doesn't have a lot to it. I think that a lot of the level design that isn't the wall climbing sections, there's just nothing particularly interesting. The game tells its story all through, journal pads and scribbled markings. There's some sort of like environmental theme going on, but it's nothing that you can really gravitate towards, and it doesn't feel essential. And part of that, again, is just because the areas where you're just walking around, there's just really nothing of note. Like, there are things that you can like they're a pile of rocks that you can put a rock on top that counts as like a collectible, air quotes. There's little bits and pieces that are all sort of like achievement hunter wet dreams, but they're not really pivotal to the kind of core gameplay. So what you end up with is what feels like a really solid proof of concept where they nailed down the core mechanic, and then the rest of the game is just this kind of side dressing. And it's kind of what I was saying about Sonic, where I would love them to have another go at this, because I think with what they have here as the foundation, if they now spend, 18 months just working on the rest of the game and figuring out like a flow that is way more enjoyable, or like the high points are not just the wall climbing, but, whatever other things you want to add on top, I think there'll be a really solid game here. But instead, it's a really solid idea, and there are really solid moments with the wall climbing, but the overall thing, it's a ham sandwich, and maybe there's a little bit of mustard in there, but it doesn't elevate too much past that. But I do think it's very short. It's only about 4 hours, and it is on Game Pass. So I would probably say, like, download it, play like the first chapter or two. Do get a feel for the wall climbing, and you'll probably have seen all you needed to see with that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I do really want to support Dontnod because it is a company that I really like, but it sounds like they've really shifted away from, narrative and gone more into a sort of feel and a look direction with this one. Even if there is a story in there somewhere.
It's definitely not a Life is Strange.
Yeah.
That would be a mild understatement to say.
Yeah, and story in games isn't necessarily just about finding random bits of lore here and there, is it, Elden Ring? Sorry about that. Anyway, Mark, there's one game that clearly you'd like to talk about that is your game of the week, as it were.
Oh my god. First is Suitors. So you've probably seen me tweeting about this at points during the week and whatnot.
Yeah.
This, now, talking about Life is Strange, I think as I was playing this, I was like, this is a Jack Lazel game in a number of ways. I don't know how much of this you could play before Game of the Year, but I would really say, Jack, like, get a couple of hours into this one.
Is it on Switch?
It is on Game Pass.
It's on Game Pass.
But it is also on Switch as well.
Is it? Yeah, it's just because I think, like, when I'm coming over, I could play it on my Switch.
Yep, that's absolutely a thing. You could. I don't know how much it is. I want to say it's probably, like, between 20 and 30 quid. But it's absolutely something you could play on Switch. Right, where the fuck do I start with this one? We could be here for a while on this one, because I have a lot to say. So, Thirsty Suitors, Jesus, right. So Thirsty Suitors is this, narrative adventure game. It's developed by Outer Loop Games. I don't know of anything they've done before. It's published by Annapurna Interactive. You play as a young woman called Jala, who is a second-generation Indian immigrant. And you left home 3 years ago. You ran off with a woman who's 10 years your senior. In the process, basically, breaking up the kind of foundational relationship with your family, but also most crucially, the relationship that you had with your partner called Tyler, who is a prominent part of this game, and basically just burned a lot of bridges. 3 years have gone by. You've come back to your sleepy town of Timber Hills, and you're back basically because your partner who you're with has basically left you high and dry, and you've got nowhere else to go. Also, on top of that, it's your sister's wedding in about a month's time. You've come back to try and patch things up and just try and make amends for, like, the damage that you've done. That is the core kind of foundation of the start of the game and your motivations. But also on top of that as well, when you come back, it's quickly established that you're back in town, and you have a number of ex-partners or friends or affiliates of those ex-partners who are all pretty pissed off at you with you. And what kind of unfolds throughout the game is, let's say, a Scott Pilgrim type scenario where you have to go into combat with your exes. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The game itself is split into 3 different compartments. You have the skateboarding section, the cooking section, and the turn-based JRPG-style combat section. And I'll go through each one. The skateboarding section is probably the most kind of straightforward and bare bones of the 3. It's, I'd say, probably the most disappointing of the 3. And it's not entirely, like, the game's fault, but look, the bar has been set in terms of what a skateboarding game can be. And whether your preference is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or Skate, doesn't really matter. We've already hit the echelon of what can be done with a skateboarding game. So, unfortunately for me, and I'd imagine for you as well, Jack, the moment you're playing a game that has skateboarding, your brain is wired to a particular like set of standards that you expect in terms of how you move, how you jump, how it just feels to ride around on a skateboard in a video game.
Of course, yeah.
Thirsty Suitors doesn't reach that, but it's not as bad as Skatebird, because let's be honest, what is? It's in the middle. It's serviceable, kind of similar to like Bomb Rush Cyberpunk earlier this year. Of the 3 different ways you get around, one of them was skateboarding. It's kind of like, here is a skateboarding mechanic that is basic enough that you can get around. You don't have to deal with the frustration of being able to bail. Like, you can fall into water, but you can't fall off the skateboard. You can't, like, go halfway through a half pipe and then drop and land on your head. Can't really do any of that. It's a bit slow. It's a bit, like you push forward and you just go at a single pace. The way that you latch onto things in the environment is a little bit too sticky. Sometimes you're trying to get off of a rail, but then you just latch onto like another rail that you're not even that particularly close to, and it can get a bit annoying and a bit fiddly. And so it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. The other issue with the skateboarding, and this leads to one of the other big issues with the game, is that the game only actually has 3 main areas to explore. You have Jala's house, you have the town centre, which does have like a couple of points of interest, and there's the skate park. And while that does play into the sort of sleepy town nature of Timber Hills, so from a kind of realistic sense, it makes sense that there's not a lot of areas to explore. From an actual, hey, I'm playing this fucking thing, by the time you get about halfway through the game, and the game's about 8 to 9 hours long, you realise that, I've only got these 3 points of interest that I'm going to constantly go back and forth between. And that's a bit of a shame, because I think with just 1 or 2 more areas, the game would just feel a little bit more fully realized in terms of like where you need to go. Now, I will say that with the turn-based combat that you do, like with each of your X's, there's kind of like a unique stage setup that is unique to each X. So it's not like you're just kind of fighting in a park against all of them and you just have the park as the backdrop. Like there's a lot of stuff that they do with that. There's a lot of work that goes into like the animations of the characters. So I feel like they spent more time kind of worrying about that than having another like a second skate park or whatnot. And I'd probably say they did make the right choice there. And I think it's probably just a concession of like the resources they had. And if they'd had, another environmental artist, maybe that they would have been able to kind of fit another area in. So I can see why the concessions were made. And I do think at least that they focused their energy on the things that were the most important about this game. So with that said, the other 2 modes, and they're kind of lumped together in some ways, is the cooking and the turn-based combat. And the reason they're lumped together is that it's not really about the cooking and it's not really about the combat. What both of these things serve to do is to explore the relationship between Jala and whoever is the person adjacent at that moment in time.
And they fight and cook stuff together?
They do, yes. So in the cooking section, we will get to that. Okay. So in the cooking section, it's always you and it's always your mother or your father. And if you remember, I was talking about a game earlier this year called Venba, which was like a cooking game that was kind of set in sort of South Indian Tamil culture. And actually, the characters in this game are actually from the same ethnicity, same kind of specific part of India as well.
Was it about cooking biryani, if memory serves me correctly?
At one point, yes.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, you unlock like new recipes every day or every kind of chapter that you do. And you can go and you can go pick one at random, or maybe there's like a specific character who wants a specific dish, and you're like, right, we're going to make this dish. And either, depending on which dish it is, your mother or your father is going to help you. And the dish, depending on its difficulty, is set into a specific amount of rounds or stages. So, like, earlier on, you have like 5 or 6 stages. And they're based on, you always start by washing your hands, obviously. And then you might need to cut, you might need to peel, you might need to grind, you might need to fry. But once you've done that, you get to, obviously, like, the end of the dish. And for each of these stages, you have a specific, like, again, kind of rhythm action mini game, but it's more kind of quick time based where, you'll see the A button appears on the screen and the circles start really large. And as the circle encloses on the A button, you have to press it at the right time. And if you hit it at the right time, you'll get a perfect. And then, it's based on trying to hit the buttons at the perfect time to get the highest score possible. And if you get perfect for like those 5 or 6 prompts, you'll get a remark from your mother or your father. And then that also plays into like the quality of the food. So you're trying to get like a 3-star rating. So the more perfect prompts that you do, the higher the rating will be at the end of it. But between each of those rounds, you will get dialogue between you and depending on whether it's your mother or your father, based on whatever the scenario is at that time. And at times, they're just kind of silly, like funny, world-exploring conversations about like what your dad did when he was younger and what sort of trouble he'd get into.
Mark, is it like spoken dialogue or is it just written dialogue?
Yeah, no, it's all fully voice acted, and the voice acting is really, really strong. Actually, like it's really, really well crafted.
Are you turning the corner on voice acting?
Yeah. Like even I have my moments. No, I think actually overall the characterization and the voice acting is really, really strong in this game, and the writing in general. I will say this is the funniest game that I've played this year. I think the dialogue is really, really snappy, really sharp in this. And one of the examples, not in terms of the humor, but just in terms of like the strong writing. And I should kind of preface by saying that, so this game is, Lawrence Fox would not like this game. Everyone in this game is somewhere between the spectrum of slightly gay and very gay, and everywhere between male, female, trans, non-binary, the full spectrum of genders and orientations are in this game, and they're all fully explored. And so you have like one of the conversations that you have with your dad is about the fact that Jala asks him kind of straight up, like, hey, when you found out, or when I came out to you that I was bisexual, like, were you disappointed? Or I think it was like, when you found out I had a girlfriend, were you disappointed? And he talks about, and he's open about the fact that his sister, who is also another character in this game, who's fucking awesome, by the way, years earlier, she came out that she was a lesbian, and your father, his sister, he couldn't understand it at the time for a number of reasons. The kind of like worrying about like how they would be perceived by their peers and other people in the community. And he says outright that, I lost a number of years with my sister because of that. And that's one of my biggest regrets, and I'll never get that time back. And so, with you, I always knew that regardless of who you brought home, as long as like they're good to you and you're happy, I don't care. Gender is irrelevant. Like, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. And I'll never make that mistake again. Which I think for certainly people like the kind of elder generations, I think that is and it's a very realistic like scenario that would play out. And I've known people who have known people that have said like, hey, yeah, my parents or like older brothers or whatever, they didn't understand at the time, but through dialogue and talking about it or whatnot, they got to the point where they're like, look, as long as you're happy, I don't give a fuck who you're sleeping with, whatever your orientation is, like that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're happy.
Watch Welcome to Wrexham from this week, Mark.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very similar themes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But what you have is this clash of that, all of this kind of stuff that's very kind of grounded in reality, but then you have this very like anime style presentation where, so as you're like, doing the chopping of the dishes and blah, 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 you get like these, there's a meter in the top left that are like, kind of like chili peppers, and
Red hot ones.
Like chop. They're very hot, yeah. And they charge up as you like, obviously, doing well with your prompts. And if you get like one chili pepper, you can use that. So for the next round, say that you have to like cut onions. You can either do it normally, or you can use like one of the chili peppers and you'll do like a super cut. And what that means is that you, if you do all the prompts, instead of getting like, 3 bars of approval from your dad, you can get like 4.5 instead. So you can, reach those 3 stars quicker.
God, if only family scenarios were that easy, eh? Imagine,
I know.
Imagine how much better everyone's relationship would be with their parents. Yeah,
but then it goes into this like
me, and I pulled a chili out, and then all of a sudden it was all right.
But it goes into this like super fucking wacky anime scenario where like, you're fucking throwing the knife up in the air and then you're chopping stuff in this chopping onions in this super kind of ridiculous fashion. Or if you're using a frying pan, you're spinning it around on your finger, and it's all just completely like the presentation is kind of crazy. So you have these like 2 kind of styles that are kind of clashing together, but they actually merge really, really well because they're both coming from a real kind of like, there's a real genuine kind of craft and love for this that I just think shines through really well. So you have all of that, and that really, and I actively wanted to cook all the dishes because all of the conversations you have. So, you know, the dad is very chill, very laid back. You know, he plays good cop, and then the mum obviously plays bad cop. And you learn through the times that you cook with her that a lot of the reason she is the way she is because of how hard her mum was on her, and that all kind of plays out. And I won't say much more. I would say go play the game and kind of find that all out for yourself. So, with all of that, you then come to the combat that happens in the game. And, like, the very kind of basic mechanics are in there in terms of, you know, you have your basic attacks, and you have, like, status abilities that you can, like, throw onto your enemy, or, in this case, your exes. And one of the things I will say straight away is that,
it's like Scott
again,
Pilgrim,
with, like, the really
you got to fight, like, exes.
Yeah, it's totally Scott Pilgrim. You fight all your exes, yep. But the thing with this is that each of your exes, the kind of, like, the motivation for them in terms of having this fight with you is different. You know, you've got the one partner who is, I'll be quite honest, she's just very, very thirsty for you. She just wants to bang. Like, she's just like, let's just forget all about this. Let's just go bang right now. So you have to kind of work through that with her. You have the one, like, your kind of main partner that you had this on and off relationship with, and you have a lot of, like, shit that you have to work through. And that battle is, like, one of the bigger kind of climaxes towards the end of the game. You have the one partner who you cheated on, like, with your main partner, you cheated on with this other person, and then they took, like, the heat and all the blame for a lot of stuff that happened. So they're obviously fucked off with you because, like, they took all the blame for this. And so all of these fights happen. But again, what happens is that you'll do, like, a round of moves, but then you'll go into dialogue, and, like, every time that you have dialogue, there's, like, an option that you can pick from. So, you know, you can be, like, a bit of a heartbreaker about it, or you can try and be a bit more platonic. And the dialogue obviously branches off, like, from depending on the options that you pick. And so each of these, like, fights, even though you have the combat itself, which I'll be honest, the combat it's pretty basic, it's pretty bare bones. Like, I've played far more compelling, complex turn-based style RPG games, but that isn't what is the kind of crux of this. Like, the thing that you're trying to do is understand the character and try and come to, like, an emotional reconciliation where the two of you can, like, all right, look, we fucked up in the past. Can we now be friends? Can we, like, figure a way to kind of go forward? And that's, like, the real triumph of this game, is each of these reconciliations that you have, on top of the fact that the dialogue is really, really fucking funny, and, like, all of the boss fights are completely, like, absurd in terms of their set pieces and scenarios. And so, like, you have the two things with the combat. One, your status abilities. So in other games, you might have, you know, slow or haste or death or blah, blah, blah. In this, you can make your character thirsty. So they get, like, completely enamored with you, and they, you know, every turn that they try and attack you, they might fall over and hit themselves. And then you have, like, specific moves that are, like, will do double damage because they're, like, a thirsty affiliated move. You can make your opponent really angry or break their heart. And then you have moves that are associated with that. And depending on the person you're fighting, you kind of have to figure out, like, all right, which of these, like, if I shock them, if I try and make them thirsty, if I try and impress them, which one of these is kind of most suited to that particular fight to then do more damage on them. There's not an exact science to it, and it's a bit rough around the edges, but it's actually just quite funny just trying all of the different statuses. Because, again, the dialogue with each of them, the way that you kind of, like, try and invoke that status and the response from your ex, it's just really, really well crafted and really very funny. And then on top of that, the game has summons.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, but instead of summons in the conventional sense, you know, Ifrit, Shiva, name your summon of choice. You have, like,
Doom
so
Train.
you have your mum.
Okay.
And basically Jala just goes, "Mom," and then points at the X or the enemy or whatever. And a 30-foot kaiju version of your mum comes along, holds a slipper, and just slaps them and flattens them to do, like, high damage.
What the hell?
You have your auntie Chandra, who's, like, this super buff skateboard fixing lesbian who just kicks ass, and every time you go into the shop, she's lifting weights. If you pick her, you get this training montage, and at the end of it, it clears any statuses or weaknesses that you've accumulated, and it also, like, regenerates health for the next couple of turns. as you defeat all of your exes, they become summons that you can use to do damage or do bits and pieces. And it's just very, very enjoyable to watch all of it play out. And it's not a perfect game. I think because of the way that the ending of the game falls a bit flat in terms of it feels a bit rushed. I think that the crescendo they lead up to in terms of the final fight is really well crafted, but then it's just kind of like, oh, it's over. I think that having only the 3 areas does get a bit frustrating towards the end, and it does make the game feel like it goes on probably about an hour or 2 longer than it needs to. But I won't lie, I wanted to see this game through from beginning to end, and it's one of those rare games where I wanted to talk to every NPC, I wanted to talk to every character, I wanted to explore every kind of like dialogue branch, because I just found the writing and the voice acting to be really strong. And though the game can at times fall a little bit into that like teenage melodrama where you've got 2 teenagers that have fallen in love for the first time, so everything is way more fucking dramatic than it really needs to be. And, you know, as someone in their mid-30s, I'm like, all right, when I was 17, yes, this was the biggest fucking thing ever. In my mid-30s, I do look at it, and some of the writing towards the end, you're like, look, you two, just fucking get over it. All right, this isn't as big as you're making out to be. But I also can understand that when you're teenagers, this is the biggest thing at that moment in time. So it is kind of relatable. But it doesn't... there's only a couple of times towards the end where that melodrama ticks over to a point where it gets a bit cringe. But for the most part, it kind of it hits a perfect sweet spot. And again, like, you know, I think the relationship with Jala and her parents... I think the dad is probably my most enjoyable character in a game this year. He'll do little things like, so when you do a round of the cooking and you like get 3 stars, you do it perfectly. He'll be like, you know, awesome, you did really well, and he'll give you a thumbs up. But the way that he'll give you a thumbs up will be different every time. And then there'll be one time where he'll do like the Terminator 2 thumbs up pose at the end, where he kind of like sinks below the kitchen counter, and you just see his thumb coming down. And just kind of goofy like pop references and things like that. There's just the game has so many little bits and pieces like that. Yeah, I really think it's worth playing. I don't think it's a straight up stand up like Game of the Year contender. I do think it's probably like best story a contender in that area. And it has like 1 or 2 moments that I think are really strong. And it also has like a good boy and a good cat as well. That is probably worth kind of like investigating. So. I think for you, Jack, knowing your pedigree for the games that you like in this kind of arena, I think this would speak to your sensibilities.
Yeah, no, it sounds like just a lot of things that I was not expecting when I originally saw the game.
As I was playing it, it was a lot of things I was not expecting, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's a bit one of those happy surprises, a bit like Dave the Diver, where you're like, how many games actually is this game?
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. Like, you are playing it and you're like, how, you know, as I was playing through it, I was like, all right, here's another kind of mechanic that you're throwing on. Here's another pop culture reference. Like, I was going through and I was like, all right, so we've had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Cooking Mama, Night of the Woods, you know, turn-based JRPGs, Scott Pilgrim, like 3 or 4 other things as well. It just kept going and going and going. But it's surprisingly cohesive considering all of that. Yeah, a real genuine surprise and a real delight this year for me.
Oh, mate, yeah. I definitely feel like that's something I'll get involved with. Maybe on the way over to come and see you guys when we do Game of the Year.
Please do. Yeah. I think it's one of those things as well that within about the first 20 minutes or so, like when you do like the first kind of X encounter, you get the proper like understanding of like, all right, this is what this game is. And if you can kind of gravitate with the humor that it goes with, if you're on board at that point, you'll be on board for the whole thing. And I think you will be. So I'd be really interested to get your thoughts on it if you get to it.
Cool. Sounds good, mate.
All right. Do you want to take this first news story? Because I want to take a break for 2 minutes to let my voice rest.
You did a lot of talking there. That was a lot of explaining. Yes. And it is an easy news story to take because it is the GTA 6 first trailer apparently will be available in December, as confirmed this week by Rockstar. So they issued a statement to say that they're releasing a trailer, which is interesting, but probably speaks to the sort of gravity of how this game is expected to do. So Rockstar confirmed it will release the first GTA 6 trailer next month in December. The news follows this morning's Bloomberg report that claimed Rockstar was ready to formally announce GTA 6 within days. Rockstar co-founder Sam Houser has just issued the following statement confirming the release. Next month marks the 25th anniversary of Rockstar Games. Wow, that's crazy, isn't it? Thanks to the incredible support of our players worldwide, we've held the opportunity to create games we are truly passionate about. Without you, none of this would be possible, and we are so grateful. In '98, Rockstar was founded on the idea that video games could be an essential to any culture as any other form of entertainment, and we hope that we've created games you love in our efforts. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. There's a GTA 6 game coming very, very soon. This is the sort of thing I think that is, yeah, if I'm not sure if Rockstar are like a publicly traded company, but it's the sort of thing that can send a share price through the roof. And yeah, we had that sort of weird, not quite ready, sort of early work build of GTA 6 released, didn't we? About maybe a year or so ago, that leaked out that a lot of people were unhappy with, including Rockstar themselves. So it'd be very interesting to see what their first public offering is. But how would you say, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited about GTA 6 are you to play, Mark?
I wouldn't say it's kind of weird, right? Because when like all the tweets were coming out this week about, how old were you 10 years ago? What did you look like 10 years ago? And it's kind of odd because I remember exactly, the house I was living in at the time. I remember loading up my Xbox 360 with GTA 5, and I remember, playing that first kind of half an hour or so of the game. And it doesn't seem like it was 10 years ago. And GTA 5 as a whole, as a concept, doesn't seem like it was 10 years ago. Partially because the thing hasn't been out of the fucking charts for the last 10 years. Like, how are people still buying this game? It's ridiculous.
It's the second best-selling game of all time, Mark.
It is unbelievable. So it's kind of wild to say that, a 10-year-old game. I wouldn't say like I'm pumped and I'm ready to go for GTA 6. Because I do kind of worry, like, what can you do after GTA 5, And
GTA
that whole...
6.
Well, yeah, obviously. Numerically, yes, you can do that. But, like, a lot of what was the charm of the 3D GTA games was that kind of satirical look at America, depending on the era you were looking at. And a lot of the humor in those games... It's not that it hasn't aged well, it's just not as funny as it used to be. And even some of the stuff in GTA 5 just feels kind of very on the nose now. Like, the whole bit about Facebook and the whole life hacker thing. Even by 2013, that felt a bit bro. Like, it was fine, and I enjoyed the bit where you get the guy to hold the mobile phone and it blows his head off. But it still kind of felt like a bit on the nose. So I do kind of worry from that aspect. How much it's going to continue
always been that way, though, man. Well,
yeah,
I know. Takeoffs of whatever. So,
and it's just, I don't know, I think I still myself have like open world fatigue, and that GTA 5 world was fucking gargantuous. I presume Valhalla was bigger than GTA 5, but yeah, still, that GTA 5 map was just like, for its time, I guess, astronomical. So sure, like, I will probably play it. It will be the biggest game of all time. It will sell an absurd amount, and I guess for Take-Two, that's pretty good, because hopefully it means that, like, at least one fucking publisher and developer doesn't, like, lay off people for the next 3-4 years. But, obviously, I will watch the trailer, obviously, but I wouldn't sit here, like, rubbing my knees like I'm fucking Vic Reeves. Like, it's just, yeah, I'm just not there with it. What about you?
I'm really excited because I've really liked every Grand Theft Auto game, I'm sure there are sort of, like, criticisms to be leveled at them, but to play through, those things are always raw. Like, they're always really solid. They're very rarely beset by issues. They launch well. The stories, there's going to be some bits where you cringe, but there's going to be some good bits and pieces in there too. Just like fun, weird parody stuff. I'm excited generally because I don't give a shit about the GTA Online stuff, which is the stuff that's kept GTA 5 selling and doing as well as it has done for a long, long time. But I do really care about GTA, the first player experience. So hopefully there's that in there as well. And they haven't just gone to, like, here's like a 15-20 hour story and then here's all this online stuff. I hope it is a fully fleshed out, like 40-50 hour story that you can drop yourself into, because 10 years is a long time between games, wouldn't you say, to be waiting for the next one?
Yeah, and obviously they haven't been developing GTA 6 that whole time. They've spent a significant portion of those 10 years making all the bank off of GTA Online. And obviously we had Red Dead Redemption 2 during that time as well.
What a game.
But a game I still have not played yet, actually, now I think about it.
Which, I genuinely, you will sit down and play it at one point and be like, okay, this thing is actually incredible.
Yeah, look, I am a big fan of that first Red Dead.
Which makes it even more insane that you haven't played the new one.
I think it was because so many people were saying that it's like the kind of thing that you sit down and you realize, oh, I need to play this thing for like 3 hours at a time to actually get anything done. And I think my headspace at the time was like, oh, I just cannot be fucked with that. So, yeah. And the lack of time I have going forward means that's even more or less likely that that's going to happen.
And so, that is why you shouldn't listen to people.
Well, look, there are only so many games I can play, all right?
Yeah, true. But, you know, you wasted your time playing Headbangers Ball. You could have been playing Red Dead
Redemption. I played
it for
5 minutes, all right? I played it for 5 goddamn minutes.
Well, no,
yes, I don't get those 5 minutes back, but what could I do in Red Dead 2 for 5 minutes?
Sort of move about on a horse, I guess. I don't know.
If that.
Yeah. But still, it's a great game. You should get there at some point.
We had a whole bunch of reviews drop at the same time. Kind of felt like by surprise that the Steam Deck OLED is on its way, with basically improvements across the board, including, and this tends to be the case for the handheld consoles, every time a new iteration comes along, that the battery life is better. Because, you know, I do like my Steam Deck, but the battery on that thing does kind of evaporate pretty fucking quickly, unfortunately. But yeah, crucially, the big thing, it's got that big old shiny OLED screen on it now. Looking at some of the things on here, what do we got? Steam Deck OLED, so 1200 by 800, 7.4 inch, 90 hertz OLED screen, HDR peak. We've got some improvements in terms of the wireless, a revised AMD processor, and it's actually slightly lighter than the original Steam Deck as well. But yeah, basically, this isn't a Steam Deck 2, it is a Steam Deck 1.5. Steam have said, or Valve has said themselves, that the technology that they need to make Steam Deck 2 isn't currently available yet, so we've still got a while to go. The review here by Eurogamer talks that like enabling HDR is a bit messy in Windows, but with Valve's control of the operating system on Steam Deck, it's very simple. Some games should automatically boot in HDR mode, while the only thing you need to do for others is just enable HDR in the game's settings menu. And they've, you know, basically said that the quality of the screen is like that good. You know, there are a ton of different PC handhelds out there, but a lot of these reviews have said basically there's no screen that looks as good as this one. So, you know, Jack, for me, disposable income is not a thing I have at the moment. You certainly have more of that than me. Where are you actually in terms of what is your relationship with your Steam Deck at this point?
I go through, it's like a feast and famine relationship. I'll go through it with, like, if there's a game on Steam that I want to play, I'll kind of get involved in it and play it for a bit, or go and play some retro games in there if I'm not got anything to play on the Switch. You know, the sort of like games you play maybe for like an hour, half an hour in bed or something before you go to sleep, usually use on the Steam Deck. And yeah, you'll find me much as likely to be playing a new release as you would find me playing Burnout 3 again for the 100th time, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't need an OLED Steam Deck, but I'm sure if anyone doesn't have one and that is the, you know, tipping off point for them, now it's got an OLED screen, then yeah, can't be a bad thing.
Did you get the Switch OLED?
No.
Okay.
Again, I don't need it, so I think, does it make that much of a difference to you if you're like playing it on the move? Probably not, and if I'm at home, I'm probably playing it on my TV anyway.
I mean, I think it's one of those things, it's kind of the same thing with like the whole, you know, the first time that you play something on 4K and you realize that, oh, I can't go back now. It's probably the same thing that the first time you play something on that OLED screen. Because like, you know, my PS Vita, that original model does have the OLED screen. But obviously, it's much smaller in terms of size and types of games on there. But I would imagine that the first time I play like a Steam Deck OLED or even the Switch OLED, I'd be like, right, well, I guess I can never go back to the original again. So you've got the first three models that currently exist, the LCD Steam Deck. They go for $349, $399, and the highest tier, which is the 512 gigabyte, is $449. The base OLED model for the Steam Deck starts at 512 gigabytes, and that's $549. And then the highest tier, which is a 1 terabyte OLED limited edition, is $679. So obviously the big thing there is that you've got a 1 terabyte hard drive installed. Because even with, like, I've got the 200, I think we've both got the 256 gigabyte model, if I'm correct. And while that is still quite a bit, you notice that goes pretty quickly when you try and install even, like a kind of sort of mid-range, sort of top-tier game these days. They're all, can hover anywhere between like 50 to 70 gigs. And that's a chunk of that memory card already gone. So, 1 terabyte is massive.
Yeah, it is. That is huge. It's pretty pricey, but then Steam Decks themselves in general have been pricey. Have they priced down, do we think, the regular Steam Deck as a result of this, or are they still kind of in the same sort of price range they were before?
I don't think they've priced down, but they have done
the refurb.
They've done the refurb, and they did do, I think for like the 1 year anniversary, I think they had like a 20% discount of the Steam Deck. So I don't think the price has gone down, but they have definitely done a discount and the refurb scheme. So there is that.
Okay. Yeah, nice. So I'd love to see it in action and just kind of like basis of comparison, how much better it looks than the other ones. I'm sure there'll be a few YouTube videos that kind of pop up and illustrate that eventually for us to, and then, I don't think I need another Steam Deck. As much as you say I've got disposable income, I don't have like $500 to drop on something that's just a slightly upgraded version of something I already have.
Well, we know Garrett will probably do it, or Barry, so I'll wait for one of those two and then I'll take a trip down and play it.
We'll see. Well, Garrett, who famously admits that he hasn't even played a Steam Deck at really any point.
You know what? That's a fair point, actually. I mean, he'll still buy it. He can't help himself.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, Jack, talk to me about Sony.
Sony confirms delay to half its planned live service games, not to its half-planned live service games, sorry. So, I
mean, they're probably half-planned to some capacity.
Sony's halved the number of live service games it plans to release by March 2026 from 12 to 6. Back in February 22, Sony stated it will aim to launch over 10 new live service games. The news came days after it acquired Destiny developer Bungie. Now, however, it seems plans are being scaled back to ensure each live service game's quality. Wow, they're actually concerned about quality, Mark. So Sony President, CEO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki explained on a call discussing the company's latest financials. "We are reviewing this. We are trying as much as possible to ensure these games are enjoyed and liked by gamers for a long time," says Totoki. The 12 titles, 6 titles will be released by financial year 2025. That's our current plan. As for the remaining 6 titles, we are still working on that. That's the total number of live service and multiplayer titles, and mid to long term we want to push this kind of service and the unchanged policy of the company. It's not like we stick to certain titles, but game quality should be the most important thing, he says. And I wonder if he actually means it, or if they're like, hey, these things are really expensive to develop and some of them just ain't going to be that good, so we should probably scrap them. But yeah, interesting. I think games as a live service, have any game as a live service launched in recent times that jumps out to you, Mark, that is doing really well? Like any of the newer ones? Because I can't really think of any.
I feel like the most recent one, probably Apex Predator, but even that was a couple of years ago now. I guess Warzone was doing pretty well for a while.
Yeah, but that's been out for at least 4 years now, I think.
I mean, I think just before the pandemic or around about the pandemic, it was very much like first year pandemic is where a lot of people were playing that thing.
Me included.
Fall Guys had its success, but even still probably isn't on the scale of what like Sony are thinking about doing. And here's the thing, right? The idea that you wanted to release 12 live service games and just completely oversaturate a market that's already pretty fucking oversaturated is an absolutely just abhorrent idea. And, the fact that they've had at least the common sense to go, all right, maybe that's 6 too many, is at least a step in the right direction. The fact that one of these games is a Last of Us multiplayer, like, honestly, I think that if you're going to do one of these, it's probably, for Sony at least anyway, it's probably smart to do something that's attached to an IP that is as strong as a Last of Us. I think that at least guarantees that people will take a look at this thing. Whether they stick around, who knows? But, at least that, all right, let's just take something that we know that has cachet to it and just hope for the best. But, like, the idea that Sony executives are like, oh, yeah, the phenomenon of live service games, that's very much like a trend that we think will continue going forward. And it's like, well, obviously it's not, because for every like Destiny or every, whatever live service game that does work, there's 20, 30, or whatever the number is of these that fail pretty fucking significantly. So I think it's more of a thing where these companies are trying to will the live service market into being the thing that, you know, we use going forward. Like, less time having to develop new games and more time with people just spending money on one thing. Yeah, there are those that exist. Fortnite exists and is going to continue to make the money that it makes. And Epic will continue to try and, you know, get people away from Steam by having Fortnite just on the Epic Games launcher, whatever. But you can't just make 12 of these or even 6 of these and just, because, like, look, what the fuck was the Destruction All Stars? That went with a whimper. They've got Foam Stars. Is that, I think, next year?
Oh God, yeah, Foam Stars. I still haven't got over that.
That is dead on arrival. All right, it's just, you know,
yeah,
they're trying, but I'm sure, like, if they hit this approach, you know, 30 times, I'm sure one of those 30 it'll eventually work out for them. But I don't know. I'd rather just look. They're still going to make money. You know, they'll make a Last of Us 3 at some point. Insomniac will make Wolverine, and that will sell gangbusters. And they'll have their hits here and there. But I don't know. There's no guarantees with the live service model. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, if you look at all the games making money at the moment, it's like Honor of Kings, it's Fortnite, it's, you know, mobile version of PUBG, Candy Crush, Genshin, Roblox. All of those have kind of established, I guess. The only one I don't really know too much about is Honor of Kings. So I'm just going to Google that right now. Have you heard of this game?
Never heard. That's the thing. There's usually a couple of these that are like massive.
It's a MOBA.
I mean, yeah, that sounds about right then.
Yeah,
probably.
Oh no, released March 8th, 2023. Okay.
Probably like a bit thing that's massive in South Asia. But then you got like fucking Tencent. Like David Zaslav as well from Warner Bros saying, "Oh, yep, we're doing live service. You know, we're gonna pivot hard towards that." It's just like. It's like it's the whole kind of pivot to video thing, you know? It's, yeah, you can all pivot towards this, but all I see is an announcement in 2 years' time that you've laid off like 20% of the company because you invested all in this and made no returns. Because again, it's an oversaturated market.
Yeah, completely. You know, and I think about all the games that people around me have enjoyed playing and stuff this year, and none of them are games of like as live service style games. The only one that I see people that I know play, I guess, semi-regularly is like a Fortnite or a Warzone, and I don't really see much of it else. I think the majority of it just exists in sort of mobile gaming, and there aren't as many of those sort of like home console games taking serious bank at the moment, just from looking at the trends of what's making money in the marketplace just on Google just now. So yeah, if they're shit hot games, maybe they make some money, but to me it seems like a very difficult thing to get people to regularly part with their cash. I mean, you can get them to part with like 50, 60, 70 quid when you launch a game, but can you get people to to stay on and be an active user and regularly part with their money? I don't think it's as easy as it used to be.
Well, I think also as well, you know, when I was at Gamerfest the other week and I'd be talking to kids, or I'd be talking to the parents of kids, and I'd be saying to them, like, hey, you know, what games do they play at home? All of them, it was either Fortnite or Roblox. And you're not going to get them away from those two games. The only way that you're going to get them away from those is if one of those games does something that, you know, the community doesn't like, or just, you know, whatever the case may be. It could be one of 100 things. And they go, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to move on to something else. But until that time, and there's no guarantees that will happen, you can't just like dangle a set of shiny keys for this new thing. Because if they've got their thing over here, and I guess even, you know, like GTA Online is still doing what it's doing. You can't just make a new one of these and expect people are going to jump on board. They might download it and go, all right, I'll give this a look. But they've got their things, and it's just it's a bad way to go. But what are you going to do, huh? This is the CEO way, the executive way.
Yeah, they're just trying to make all the money they possibly can, every single pound coin of it. Or euro, or dollar.
Okay, one last story and we'll get out of here. Nintendo are developing a live-action Legend of Zelda movie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Chris Pratt to play Link? What are we doing?
Details are sparse at present, but Shigeru Miyamoto announced the news on Nintendo Japan's Twitter/X account, said the project has been in development for many years now. As per an accompanying press release, Miyamoto will produce the movie, which is being co-financed by Nintendo and Sony Pictures Entertainment, which is interesting, with Avi Arad responsible for many hit films also producing. Arad's films, if you're wondering, are primarily, but not exclusively, within the superhero genre, ranging from this year's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, also including the Uncharted adaptation with Tom Holland, as well as the likes of Venom, Morbius, the live-action Ghost in the Shell, and next year's Borderlands movie. Why would you not lead off with
Morbius? Holy shit.
The film will be directed by Wes Ball, who directed the 3 Maze Runner films and next year's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. But don't expect to see anytime soon. This is going to be a fair few years away. So there's a couple of things to talk about here. First of all, the fact that we're doing a live adaptation of The Legend of Zelda. And look, in one aspect, Nintendo are probably looking at the amount of money that Mario made this year and have gone, fuck it, why not do it? Probably looked at some of the other kind of live adaptations that have been happening over the last couple of years. Some of them have been successes. Some of them have been Gran Turismo. You can't, hit a winner every single time. I feel like there's probably more meat to the bone in terms of like a film you can do with Legend of Zelda against a Gran Turismo. I'll be honest, I don't think it's by that much more of a space, but at least there's the hero's journey that you can work with. I guess the big thing is like who will play Link and will he talk? I did see today, there was all of the kind of like obvious suggestions and whatnot, but someone did say Mae Martin, and I was like, yeah, fuck it. Link kind of does have an androgynous look about him at this point. Why not Mae Martin?
That could work. It'd be a weird energy for Link, though, I think.
I think Link has always had a bit of a weird energy about him, to be fairness.
Yeah, I think Mae Martin just has a really weird energy.
Yeah.
But in a good way. Mae Martin is very funny. I just don't know if that works as... I don't know if that works.
Well, I just don't think Link talking in general is going to work.
How about Erling Haaland as Link?
I think he's a bit too buff.
Yeah, but,
he's not quite twinky enough.
Oh, I see. You want to make him sort of like, skinnier, plankier.
Kinda, yeah. It's kind of his vibe.
Yeah, but, Link does climb up shit, He's pretty...
He does, but he's more svelte than Haaland is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Haaland's probably too tall as well, isn't he? I feel like
the other big suggestion I saw was like Timothée Chalamet, which
Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, I kind of see it.
Yeah. No, I guess sort of like Wayfish, if that's kind of like one of your key things. Or what's the one dude? Is it Finn Wolfhard? Is he like... Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that could work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just weird, isn't it? Because Link really doesn't have a... He doesn't really have a personality, does he? Like...
No, he's not quite the sort of like empty avatar that you do get in like kind of action adventure games, but he's also not far removed from that as well. He doesn't have a lot of expression outside of things like Wind Waker, where he can move his eyes about at least. And a lot of the story in these games it typically isn't about him. It's about the characters around him. And on one hand, I'm like, oh, well, this probably isn't going to work. But then on the other hand, Super Mario Bros. Made an obscene amount of money. But, I think part of that as well is that you have Illumination, that have a track record when it comes to doing the thing that they do. And, that Mario Bros. Film felt more like, in some ways, an Illumination film than a Mario Bros. Film, where, like... I don't know. I mean, I've never seen a Maze Runner film, but I don't think I need to see Legend of Zelda as a Maze Runner film. That's just me.
Yeah, I don't think that works. Mario's got so much character, There's a sort of personality to it. I don't know if Link works as a protagonist like that. But, I guess... would you make Link a like relatively silent protagonist and still keep to that? I don't know. It might have more.
I mean... It's not going to happen. Like, the fact that this is a major motion picture, there's no way in hell you're going to have a senior producer sign off on like, all right, let's have our main protagonist not talk throughout the film.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you get Timothée Chalamet or someone like that. Or Erling Haaland, obviously.
And so I guess I think about the fact of like, all right, Nintendo have obviously they've struck gold with the Mario thing, so they're going to continue forward. And I'm like, while Legend of Zelda, in some ways, it was the like next most obvious thing for them to pivot towards. I don't know if it's the most suitable. Now, we could obviously be completely wrong in a couple of years' time, and it'll come out and it'll be excellent. But I think about some of the other things that are in their back catalogue that could have been more suitable. Like, they could have done, imagine like Splatoon as an Illumination movie.
Yeah, that could be cool.
I think there's, in general, in terms of just kind of working with Illumination again, I think that you've got so much potential there with Splatoon. Even probably Pikmin, you could probably do something kind of interesting with that. But I wonder if like they wanted to pivot to live action because they maybe wanted to try and kind of like reach a wider scope of the audience. Again, Mario made a ridiculous amount of money. Like, we all went to fucking see that thing, It wasn't just kids that went to see that. So it's kind of a weird approach in some ways. But like, if you wanted to do live action, you could probably have done Metroid. Like, Metroid is based off of fucking 70s and 80s sci-fi anyway. So, I don't know.
Who plays Big Man? Who plays Big Man in the Splatoon movie? That's the important question.
Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn. Why?
You asked for it. That was the first name that came to me, so that's what you're getting.
Vince Vaughn. Oh, can Big Man dodge a wrench? And if he can he dodge a ball mark? That's the question. Oh, anyway. On that note,
yeah, I'm not as kind of buoyed with confidence with this one. Like, even with all of the fucking kerfuffle around Chris Pratt as Mario, I still was like, look, this is going to be a perfectly fine film because Illumination make decent animation films, even though they don't always knock them out of the park. You can always watch one of those and just like for 90 minutes it's popcorn for your eyes. But then here's the thing as well, we talk about like live action and how you have a silent protagonist and how the fuck does this work. Both the Sonic the Hedgehog films are totally fine, like
because of Jim Carrey though, mainly.
I mean, I think Ben Schwartz has enough of the tone and character down to make Sonic work.
Yeah.
But the thing is as well with those though, and I think is crucially what's going to be the difference between them and Zelda, is that like light-hearted tone that you get with Mario and you get with a Sonic, you can't really apply that to Zelda. So, and this is probably where my concerns are about, like, you've got, the director of the Maze Runner films, and they're that kind of like young adult orientated type of film. And I just kind of really worry about like the tone of the films, and if they end up being like incredibly po-faced and incredibly melodramatic. And I'm just really worried, like I saw the trailer. I don't know if you saw the trailer for Avatar: The Last Airbender that came out yesterday. And I'm not like the biggest fan of Avatar, but I thought that the live action trailer for that actually looked really, really well. And actually, if anything, made me more pissed off about how much they fucked up the Cowboy Bebop live action.
They've already done a live action like at Last Airbender, haven't they?
They have, and it was terrible. So, I think they were like, let's give it another crack, and I think they may have actually pulled it off this time. So look, they might be able to figure it out, but I'm way less confident about this one than I was about Mario.
Okay. Let's see. Vince Vaughn as Big Man in a Splatoon movie, though. Remember that. It's coming.
Who would you get to play Ganon?
He'd play Ganon?
Vince Vaughn?
Just get Vince Vaughn to do all of it. Yeah. Brian Blessed. You son of a bitch! Bastard! Imagine that.
No, hey, how about Matt Berry?
Yeah, Matt Berry. Just get Matt Berry to play every character, why not?
Oh, fuck. Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah. Matt Berry is Link. I really want Matt Berry to be like, it's like we've waited years and years and years for any kind of personality to Link, and now he just doesn't know how to pronounce words properly. Pass me to the Master Sword! Would just be amazing.
What are the chances that Anya Taylor-Joy ends up playing both Zelda and Princess Peach?
I mean, Zelda, yeah. She's just perfect. She just looks like Zelda already, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Just got the whole look down. I can't think of any. I can't think of any incidental characters of like Zelda, Link, and Ganon that anybody would want to crack out. But yeah, we'll have this. Have to wait for whatever comes out of it. Look, I trust Miyamoto. He ain't gonna sign off anything that's garbage, is he? I
mean, that '93 Mario Bros. Film happened.
Don't you dare! How dare you question the Hosk on this sacred podcast that is basically a testament to the existence of Bob Hoskins while he was here.
Sorry, Bob. I'm sorry, Sir Bob.
Should apologize.
Was he knighted?
In my heart, he was. Yes.
And on that bombshell, that will do it for another installment of A Link to the Cast. As always, please like, listen, share, and subscribe. Tell us who you would have play Big Man in a Illumination-fronted Splatoon film. As always, you can find us on Twitter. Let us know on Twitter at Link to the Cast. As always, Dave is at The Day to Dave. I'm at Living Project. Jack is at Jack Lazell. And Garrett is at Garrett Kidney. Thank you very much for listening again. We will probably have news in the upcoming week or two about Game of the Year festivities, what's happening, and where you can start voting on all of our nominations, which we are currently in the process of getting rounded up and finalised. But until then, I've been Mark, here's been Jack, this has been Link to the Cast. See you next week. Bye.